Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are going to start a new Dominions 5 series today, and I am joined by none other than the great and famous and powerful Sy.
Hello, I'm Sai. I like playing Dominions and talking about it.
Excellent. And that's what we're going to be doing. The talking about it, that is, less so the playing. So we are going to be casting a game together. And this is a game that was started recently in on Lucid's Discord community, and it's a special game in a sense. Do you want to talk about how it's set up with the players?
Yeah, so it's called a Hydra Game. The concept behind it is that instead of having a disciple team where you have multiple people each playing their own nation, it's set up where you have a team of people all playing one nation. Those from the immersion server might be used to a similar idea with the mentor and mentee channels, where a player can post about their build and ask for specific advice and share battle reports and so on. But this one is intended to be not really a mentoring game so much as an equal partnership, and it's also going to be intended to be at least a lot more hands-on, where both players are actually looking and talking about all of the turns. We've had some things to this effect going on in the tournament already, where people will actually have their substitute take part in the game, look at all the turns, and discuss things back and forth. And I know that that was really useful for me with Kobold Lord, providing an extra set of eyes, checking for any sorts of like scripting errors, and even just providing feedback on little things like where we might want to watch out for magic phase attacks and any sort of scales that might affect sites and other things that are very easy to overlook. So having that sort of dialogue should actually make both players play better than even their usual best, just because they have the chance to combine two minds.
Yeah, for sure. And also another thing that we've discovered, I don't know if you've run into this, but like Dominions 5 games are really fun and exciting at the beginning. And it's not that they're not fun in the late game, but it can be really difficult just in terms of time commitment, to just do your turns when you're like on turn 80 and it takes 3 hours to script everything because you're playing, a communion nation or whatever. And so a lot of players have been finding that like when these games get into the late game, it just becomes so draining in like real life morale to keep playing. And so one of the ideas with these Hydra games is that the players can share the responsibility so that you can still keep the game going at a reasonable pace, but and get the turns in, and it's not so taxing on all the players.
And you have the bonus of just having someone locked in with you that you have to talk to. They have to talk with about dominions, which is always fun.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, that's a good story. So I prepared. I've got here. I put in a little notepad. I just copied the players and the races and the nations. Let me see if I can. I should be able to get this up. You won't see this on the Discord, but the recording should show up. Yeah, I've got them up right now.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I
In the
have it
recording. Yeah, you should
in
have
the
it in the
channel.
Discord. Yeah. So here is. Oh, by the way, guys, I do have a bit of a cough still, so if I suddenly go quiet, it's because I muted myself and I'm going to cough uncontrollably for a few seconds. Here is the list of nations and players. So we have Starchrist and Arabian Sanboa playing as Ulm. We have TRHMC and Sigma Furious playing as Atlantis. Triumphant Hero and Bufo playing as Joman. We got Hezekiah and Nosy playing as Vedheim. Lucid and Grippa playing as Bogarus. Maryland and Vinzanar playing as Midgard. Foolish Pride and Wintermute playing as Caleb. Arco and Isataris playing as Arco. Castronomical and Mazirian playing as Patala. We got Zan and Balin Stalin playing as Tianchi. We have a sort of a three-headed, I guess a Cerberus, not a Hydra, playing as Raga. Now, they all renamed themselves Alfurius. I'd have to go and look in Discord who they actually are. One is Easy Zero, I think. I don't know. I forget who the other two are.
It's Warp Man is
Oh,
the nominal second head.
okay.
Also, Sigma Furious is Mandarb Max.
Oh,
The Sigma Furious is just another Alfurious name.
Oh yeah, he just. Oh yeah, no. Oh, I didn't realize it was Mandar Max. Okay, Mandar Max. So a lot of people, as you guys. Oh, and finally, sorry, Pendragon and Grandpa playing as Fallenegra. So I have played many games with a lot of these players. Most of the other games on my channel have involved a lot of these players, although some of them I have no experience playing with. And yeah, and we had bans. If three teams all voted to ban one nation, it got banned. But I think the only bans were Relay and Lemuria, which is I think reasonable.
Yeah, I think that those are just banned because you don't want to play against them, not
It,
because they think that the nations are overpowered or
yeah,
anything.
exactly. They're just so cancerous to play against, and honestly, in the case of Relay, kind of cancerous to play as. Um, so yeah. All right, let me now that that's out of the way. Why don't we, like we discussed earlier, let's not connect. Let's actually continue to load up, I guess, turn 2, which won't have any. We'll have some incoming messages, and it should give us, yeah, like just enough to get started here in the game. Why don't we take a look quickly, I guess, before even looking at builds or anything? Anything stand out in terms of the spawn locations that's worth mentioning? We do
Not really.
actually,
Not
yeah. I was gonna say the only thing is, the only thing that mattered was so Atlantis. We have Atlantis and Joman, right? And it would have been unfortunate for Joman if they had started next to each other. Fortunately, Joman has his own little pond over here, and he's really far from Atlantis. Um,
Yeah,
that's
and Atlantis's natural territory has 5 underwater provinces.
mm-hmm.
And then they also have one underwater province towards Bogarus that I would consider in a contested spot, since it's relatively close to both of them. But in this case, it's only Atlantis is going to have access to that.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
also worth noting that the connection towards Fallenegra is going to be only one province wide, not counting the thrones, because the underwater provinces on either side of that are also going to be Atlantis only. So
yeah.
Atlantis has a little bit of a fortress there, where
Mm-hmm.
the only person who can attack it easily is Arco to its north,
Mm-hmm.
or whoever takes control over the throne area in between Midgard, Bogarus, and Arcocephali.
Yeah. Your Bogar's here and Midgard here. Yeah, for sure. By the way, so this is a Map Nuke map. It's sort of a 3x4 layout, and this is a new, as of this recording, I don't know if it's out publicly, but this is a new art style for Map Nuke. I think they're calling it Parchment, and I actually forget who.
It's a Terrace's
Yeah, it's a
project.
Terrace's project. Yeah, so really nice just to have a different art style, which is a lot of fun. So that's why this map looks different. Oh, by the way, we started getting into the weeds a little bit, but I want to mention I'll put a link. Sy, you've in the past done some YouTube content, so I'll definitely link to your channel if people want to watch some of your older videos. You haven't uploaded in a while.
Yeah, not in the last 3 years.
And also, of course, Lucid is going to be recording this series as well, and we're going to try to release these episodes sort of at the same time, so that if you want, you can get his team's perspective as well as ours. This game is starting in sort of early October 2021, and we'll kind of try to record as it's going on, but I don't know when this will actually get uploaded to YouTube. Probably end of the year or maybe early next year. I don't know. It'll depend. We'll see. We'll try to get it out as soon as possible, but that sentence doesn't mean anything for you guys because you're watching it when it came out.
Yeah, the notion with that is to give the players a 30-turn head start so that
Yeah,
we
at
don't
least.
accidentally spoil the game.
Yeah, and the players. It's not that we don't want them to watch. On the one hand, yes, you don't want, if they were going to get spoilers from it, then you would want them to be honorable and not watch it. But we actually kind of want them to watch so that they can, in the comments, explain things that we missed, or right, like it's important to get their feedback in that way too. Speaking of feedback from players, we do have some messages. So obviously we invited the players to share as much as as they wanted to with us, and most players have taken us up on that. And I also have one or two more builds that people sent me in Discord. So why don't we let's go through, I guess, the builds that were sent to us.
Yeah. Do you want to just swap between the messages?
Yeah. So here we go. So now, by the way, I'm going to. In some cases, I think I'll read like directly what's written, but in some cases, I might skip over some details, like details about like the provinces and whatnot, and I'll just kind of summarize. So, like for example, we got a lot of detail here from Ulm, right? But basically, they're going mega scales, is what they're saying. They're also saying they're going for basically an Earth Astral bless here with, I guess, magic pen for basically astral spells, I guess is what they're trying to go for here. And by doing so, it looks like they're not taking a blood death on their pretender, which is a thing you often do in late age Ulm to get vampires easily. That's what I'm understanding from their message here. So it looks like they just went with a rainbow for like path searching and some crafting.
Yeah, and I think they mentioned that with saying that the blood is going to be a little bit slower, because typically those vampires let you snowball your blood hunting.
Yeah.
Like your primary source of blood hunting is still going to be those B1 mages, just because you can get them out of any lab, as opposed to the vampires, which you can only get 8 of total. But the vampires are excellent both in terms of early defense, because many of them are out-of-the-box thugs in this version now that you have those unique counts.
Yeah.
And a couple of them are also exceptional site searchers and blood hunters.
Yeah, they are very strong. So they're making the sacrifice. But on the other hand, picking up that magic diversity, like Ulm has good magic diversity in the sense that with communions you can make a lot of stuff, but sometimes when you're missing, like just being able to make like the earth and astral boosters can be a pain on a nation like Ulm without having to empower. So I get the appeal. Okay, so that is Ulm. Joman.
Yeah, so Jomin is apparently a little more concerned about expansion than perhaps they need to be. Jomin expansion is actually okay. It's just a little bit finicky. Like something that you have to like test and know how to set up your units for different indie types. But Rovsy is a great resource for this. So if they go poke him, he'll definitely be able to give them feedback on how to expand with either the Samurai Cavalry or just the honestly very good Jominese infantry. So they actually shouldn't have too much trouble with crossbows. And if you use a mix of your very cheap spear guys and your slightly more elite katana guys, you can actually take on heavy cavalry decently as well. I like their plan with regards to the dormant dragon for underwater expansion.
Yes.
I'm not sure how well those particular paths are going to be useful in practice. Since the higher astral, in my opinion, is a little bit of a trap, because Jomin's weakness generally isn't the mid-game and beyond, where it actually has a lot of infrastructure and is producing lots of great mages. It's usually the early game where their vulnerability to massed crossbows and certain early magic is their problem. So having something that's not going to be particularly effective at defending yourself in order to take a super late game focused magic, like something that's going to give you, Arcane Nexus and those other super late game spells, rather than something that helps you bridge that gap in the midterm where you're vulnerable to other players, is a little bit risky. I'd normally say it's like cocky, even that you're saying, oh yeah, I'm just gonna have no problem fending people off with a slightly more vulnerable build. But given that Bufo is saying that this team is slightly newer, it's a very
They might underestimate the early game threat, right?
Yeah, they might definitely underestimate the early game aggression, I would say. And yeah, if they're not confident in running something to if they're not confident in their play, I should say, compared to the other players, then it's probably worth running something a little more defensive, where if someone does attack you, that you can at least win that first war before looking forward and trying to pick something that's not going to be super helpful until turn 40 plus.
Yeah. In my experience, Joman if they die, it's almost always like, you know, after the first year, Joman is investing a lot of effort and infrastructure into underwater and getting the Ryujin, and then they get attacked by somebody who was just investing in normal armies and killing their first neighbor, right? And so, like you said, that these paths on this dragon might not help in that situation, right? Astral 5 on turn 12 is not going to save you.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that when they talk about their research plans here, early alteration in order to help the god is fine. That's fine for defense and for underwater expansion. But their god can't really take provinces without those buffs.
Yeah.
And the thing that they're not mentioning here is enchantment 5 as a rush defense thing for foul vapors. And they're also not mentioning the other early troop buffs, because Joban actually has a really solid troop buff access in general, just because they have such a great spread of paths on their mages. So they actually are pretty good with the usual Construction 3, Enchantment 3, Conjuration 3 setup for Earth mages, for just applying bulk troop buffs that way, as well as just the Alteration 2 for Earth Meld.
Yeah.
So, like, the fact that they aren't mentioning those things is a little concerning to me, because that, in my opinion, Joman's first priority should be, what am I going to do to survive and win my first war?
Yeah, I think you'd go like Earth buffs for your dudes, and then kind of worry about the rest later. Anyways, we'll see if all of this turns out to be as we have predicted.
Yeah, all speculative at this point.
Okay, Midgard. Midgard says they went, this is Maryland and Vincenar, they went with an Imprisoned Rainbow for a Bless and Solid Scales. Yeah, pretty classic, I assume, Elf Bless. Larger Repel. Larger Repel Bless on Elf Cavalry. The Midgard Sacred Elves have a Light Lance, which is, I guess, the basis for this. Do you like large elf repel builds?
I actually like defense builds on Midgard, just because it's very cheap. I think that larger is probably better for thugging once you're past the expansion phase. But in an early war scenario, people can have a lot of trouble just hitting elves reliably.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll see. I think that larger repel build is fine. I don't think that it's particularly like all that different from the like sort of defense focused builds. It just relies on it leans on, I guess, slightly different stats on the person that you're fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. One issue certainly when you go defense on elves, especially these elves, is they have like, I don't know, 13 attack lances. Like they're actually offensively pretty weak.
They don't hit that hard natively.
Yeah, so sure. Like it's sure they have 29 defense or whatever, but they kind of poke. So hopefully that works out for them. Okay, Bogarus. Oh, okay, so this was a message. Lucid didn't send his message the first turn, but Grippa snuck in and sent a message.
So the write-up thing that Lucid seems to do is kind of interesting to me, but I think it makes sense from the perspective of he's doing a video series about it. So he's not just like planning, for the game, but he's also planning to explain what this nation does, which also incidentally helps plan for the game, because it makes you put all that thought into it. Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. I play much better in games that I'm recording than in games that I just kind of wing it. Actually, that's a good question for you. Like, to what... and actually, people... when I read comments on various Dominions videos, you definitely have people who are saying, like, oh, that's, like, so much planning and thinking and so much detail. But they're actually... You actually do need to do a lot of thinking and planning when you come up with your build, right?
In general. 100%.
Like 100%, right? People underestimate, but like the amount of thought and planning you put in before the game starts is so important, and it's going to save you so much trouble down the line.
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that playing with like the absolute best pretender build isn't necessary to win, but it does certainly make it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. And things like really testing out your expansion against like the different indie types. And there's like you should do a minimum of testing, right? Which is like, okay, let's just run like I want to use these 2 units and these are the scales I need to make enough of them. And yeah, it looks like I can fight most indie types. Okay, we're good to go. That's like the bare minimum. But
Yes,
yeah, go ahead.
absolutely. And you can actually because you can test like the very specifics of expansion in single player, that's kind of the one thing that you never have an excuse for.
Mm-hmm.
Like in a multiplayer game, if you're actually going to like try hard and put effort into the game, there's no excuse for bad expansion because you should know more or less exactly what you need to beat each type of indie.
Mm-hmm. So, anyways, about what they're actually doing,
Yes.
it seems like hang on, are they? Did they actually mention here? They want to go for like indie crossbows, and so actually, Bogarus is interesting because I I I I was thinking about maybe playing in this game, and if I was gonna play, I was definitely leaning towards Bogarus. I haven't played them yet, but I like my human communion nations. Um,
Yes.
Bogarus kind of has really bad troops and kind of they have their heavy cav, which they kind of have to rely on. They're not amazing, but they have them, and they have eparchs, which are pretty good early game. But it looks like that's what they're kind of go for is scales. I guess the one thing I'd be curious, as I'm scanning through it, I'm not seeing it here, but I've seen a lot of players go for like a dormant titan on Bogarus.
Yeah, or something else defensive. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing that I've seen on Bogarus is Arcane Finesse Bless, and then a
Mm-hmm.
Blood Smite, with the idea being
Yeah.
that you have pen boosted 20 damage smites from your
Yeah.
eparchs.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
This looks like a full scales build,
Mm-hmm.
like full scales build. Like we're talking Order 3, which I don't think you even need for troop production type full scales.
Yeah. Right here, let's see if I can. I gotta find their province. Here we go. Yeah. Right now, I see only, in air quotes, only 2 magic. But yeah,
Yeah.
three, 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 three,
Um,
three, three. Yeah.
Well, which
Okay.
the other thing that I've seen for Bogarus is an Awake Researcher. The idea being that
Mm-hmm.
you rush Alteration 3 and you start casting luck on your guys to expand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that
And
lets you
it,
use
it
the
lets you recruit eparchs and still get research.
sure, yeah. But I am
But you would do
I'm
research.
yeah, I'm of the opinion that eparchs are fine for expansion and against certain opponents in a very, very early war.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that it's very easy to overproduce them and then not have enough wizards to actually win fights when a single target 20 damage spell no longer cuts it.
Yeah, I get you're right. So it's a kind of thing where if you've got like 1 or 2 neighbors that have like awake expanders or titans, you're kind of happy you have 12 hit arcs. But when they come at you with like 120 crossbows, it's not as you're not as happy. All
Yeah, or
right.
anything else that functions as evocation bait, like
Mm,
Howl or um, cheap light cavalry, that sort
yeah,
of thing.
yeah. All right. So that's it for Bogarus. Next we have Raga. So Raga doing a scales rainbow, also fairly common for the Zayadans that take kind of stats blesses pretty well.
Yeah. They also said in the in-game chat when they were picking their nation that they were going to do Cold Raga, but they clearly are not doing that. That is a
Hmm.
Heat 3 build,
Yeah. Let's
so
see. I know
very
that's
traditional Raga.
yes. I mean,
Um,
is Cold Raga a thing?
it's not a very serious thing. It's just not as good as Heat Raga.
Hmm.
Heat Raga has the Zidans, which are uh, probably the strongest sacred in the era in terms of being able to convert your treasury into dead bad guys.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Hmm.
They're an incredibly strong rush sacred, and then Heatraga's magic is also very easy to use.
Hmm.
Um, your Zidans are already going to be immune to Sulfur Haze, So when you can cast that with your with some of the randoms on those Turin sorcerers, or even by burning a fire gem to Phoenix power on your 1 or your 2 commander point mages,
Mm-hmm.
then you have some very good early evocation, and then you also have access to Wailing Winds and Firestorm and other really strong battlefield clear spells once you get into like mid game Magic. And then, of course, you also have access to both Lightless Lanterns and Quills. So your research is solid, and then your mid-game Magic with Heat is also really solid.
Yeah.
Air looks good at first brush because you have those Air 3 mages, but it's also the case that they're all Astral 1. And while some of
Mm-hmm.
them are going to random Astral 2, you still are incredibly vulnerable to a nation that can throw like 55 gold S1 mages at you and
Yeah.
just trade in to turn off your mage core in a critical fight.
And Patala is in the game, right? And even Bogarus, right? There are a lot of nations here that can field cheap astral. Yeah.
Right.
Raga is like one of those, like, everybody thinks of the Zeadans when they think of Raga, which you should, because they're incredibly strong and scary. But Raga also has really good and diverse magic access.
Yes, and even their regular units are fine. Like the Saravan Guard is a very workable heavy cavalry unit, and their
Mm-hmm.
elephants are armored, so they also work fine for expansion or with point buffs to be an alternative elemental, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, Raga, let's keep moving along. Fallenegra.
Yeah, so the concept of like you need an expander is, in my opinion, a little bit overblown. Um, it's like a little bit, it's definitely faster to get started if you have an awake expander, because getting the early resources is incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But your expansion, once you do have like 1 or 2 of those cap circle provinces, is fine. The Cyclopes expand essentially losslessly, as do Mouflons once you get enough of them. So you can toss together like a decent quantity of stuff such that your expansion parties just stop taking losses once you have enough resources to work with. So it's definitely slower out the gate. And if you're playing with aggressive players, starting out with those early resources is really important to make sure that your timing is good. But in a map nuke thing where you sort of have like established borders with a lot of nations, where you have like a set amount of space that's just yours, you
Mm-hmm.
could definitely get away with something like a Titan build or a Rainbow build, or even an Awake Researcher, just to get some more early magic for your Communions to use, or to get early alterations so you can start using your Cyclope Smiths as thugs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Going for an expander, though, is fine. I'm not sold on the Great Black Bull in particular, though, just
Yeah,
because it's a
that's.
little bit
Go ahead. Yeah.
squishy.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. That particular choice, right? Like, I actually have very little experience playing with Fallenegra. I don't even know what pretenders they have access to. But in late
They have
age,
the
the Black Bull seems like a not a great choice, right? I Off the top of my head, it feels like
You can use it. It's just a
yeah.
little bit squishier than something like a Dracon or the Antlion, and they have access to both.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you have these really reliable options. So you may as well pick one instead of the one that's easier to kill.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about the bull is that because it berserks, it's not as reliable of a battlefield caster as a Dracon.
Yes.
Um, and even the Antlion, even though its pathing isn't great, like fire and earth are definitely not things that Makone needs more of.
Mm-hmm.
Having just earth in order to drop earthquakes, um, or either like magma eruption, or it's like those other really good scaling earth spells, even something just like big maws, are all really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas big nature magic is not that impressive, I think, in the very early game, unless you get foul vapors, which the Black Bull also can't cast.
Does
And then, sorry, go ahead.
no? I was gonna say that does Flicker even have native nature?
They don't,
They
but
don't.
so having N2 on your god is pretty nice
Mm-hmm.
for getting like a nature booster, so that you can put a Thistle Mace on an N1 mage to cast poison resistance and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Um, which is kind of why I see like the Dracon is a really good option. You
Mm-hmm.
can take fire and shock resistance on that, and then also potentially take even poison resistance, and then your shrouds basically function as like an alternative resist item.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is that the Dracon itself is just um, it's really good at killing stuff. Like
Yep.
it actually just does a lot of damage, and
It's a great chassis. Yeah. for sure.
Yeah, and because the poison damage is armor negating, it's also really good against some of the harder to kill sacreds if they don't have a poison resist bless, or even just some of the harder to kill heavy infantry like Atlanteans.
Well, even if they have, because it's I think Dracon it still does a decent amount of poison damage. So even if they have like only 5 poison resist, it'll still
It can still get
chip
through, yeah.
All right, Fallenegra. Next, Vedheim. Build as an imprisoned Frostfather. Fire 3 or 4 water death soap everything.
It looks fine. Looks like a normal resistance bless, which is exactly what the Vedi need.
Yeah.
I'm curious about their not going Blood 4.
I was gonna say like Blood 4 is like just the best bless ever. Like just I'm not not obviously in all situations, but like in terms of like bang for your buck on a rainbow, Blood 4 is like I feel like you always get that.
It also makes Illwinter a lot easier to cast.
I guess they didn't. I mean, maybe we'll see one of their units. We can look at the details of their bless and see if there's something that we would have done, like a place where you could have saved some points and gotten that they already dipped, like they didn't get anything in death. Anyways, we'll have to see later. But yeah, this seems like a normal.
Check out their scales. Let me see if I can find them.
Let's see, kind of purpley color. No.
I don't recognize Vadeheim's flag.
I think it's another kind of.
Oh, I found them. They're just south of Ulm, north of Flagra. Okay, so they went Order 3, Magic 3. Okay, yeah, their scales look pretty normal.
There we go. Yeah, Order 3, Magic 3. Okay, they took Misfortune, Growth, Cold.
Yeah, sure. So Order... so Vadeheim's a little different from many of the other LA nations in that their units cost relatively few resources, but relatively high recruitment points. So with these scales, they're basically going to be able to spend as much gold as they want on units in the mid-game and beyond, and just absolutely dump out those Vedi Berserkers.
Yeah.
I believe that with my builds, when I was like testing out stuff on Vadeheim, I went slightly weaker scales for slightly larger bless. Just because I found that you can very easily convert your gold into units.
Yeah, and I also Magic 3 is a really nice pickup here also on this nation with the tiny mages. For sure.
Yes, Magic 3 is core on many nations in my opinion, and Vadeheim definitely benefits from it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, there's so that's the ones that sent us messages on this turn. There's also I got a message also in Discord from Patala, who says, and this is another interesting one because Patala went with an Awake Titan, which is the Devi.
That's castronomical. Yes.
Yeah. So
he is a very big monkey player.
He's
played
yes,
monkeys
absolutely.
of all eras.
He loves his monkeys. Yeah, I love the monkeys too. By the way, I think they're fun. I've had a lot of fun with Kailasa. So he says our build is an Awake, 5 Dominion, Earth 4, Blood 4 Devi with Turmoil and Luck and Magic, with a Reinvig and Blood Surge. So go ahead.
It's also worth noting that they recruited the elephants. Yeah. So that's, I think, sort of normal for like a scales Patala build.
Yeah.
With hard skin, their Nagas are actually very good expanders. But I can see that if he didn't take hard skin, he went Reinvig instead. That elephants are definitely going to be a little more reliable early on.
Yeah,
unfortunately, resources.
Yeah, unfortunately, with these scales, you're going to get like one elephant every year. So
no, you get 3.
No, the first. Well, you have 400 gold on the first turn. So on the first turn, you feel great, and then after, you're like, oh. But yeah, no. Well, we'll see how that works out. So they also say. So I'll actually read what they said. After evaluating several fun high Dominion naked Naga Bless ideas, we decided we are not brave enough to fight naked, and a focus on scales is more solid. The Awake Devi is a nice compromise to full scales because we still get decent scales, but can snowball early with her expanding, effectively allowing us to get more troops, mages, infrastructure up early compared to full scales. Doesn't hurt that she's an excellent weapon to add to our arsenal, especially for stopping early rushes in this shark tank of a format. Also, early blood is always nice for Patala. For scales, yeah, the scales are good for the reasons they're good. And the magic scales also, don't forget, adds having magic 2 adds a -1 MR in your dominion, which is good if you're relying on astral mages. And that's it. So that is Patala's build.
The Naga Warrior's Fascinate attack is also MR negates.
Oh yeah, interesting. So
but yeah, they're not doing a Naga build, so not super big deal.
Naga. So for those of you who don't see a lot of Patala, which is most people, because they don't get not a lot of people play Patala, these are their sacreds, and they have this weapon which is a length 5 stun, and yeah, MR negates. Okay.
Yeah, Naga Warriors are interesting in that they're very bad against like just general normal weak units because they have 9 encumbrance, but they're very good against very elite units that come in very small quantities like Zidans and War Elephants.
Yeah, it is like it's a good sacred against good troops, but it's very hard to like make a build, to expand with them, really, right? Like efficiently.
With Heartskin, they do okay.
All right, then. Now, I don't have any more like messages from people explaining their builds. They might have sent us stuff in the next few turns. I don't know. And we also
got most everyone. We didn't get.
Let's see. What did we? So Tianchi we don't have. Calib we don't have. And Atlantis we don't have.
4, and 5, 6, 7, 8.
And Arco we don't have. But we're gonna see. I think you might get some of them next turn. And honestly, since we didn't, so there are no moves, there are no blind expands this turn. Let's just load up the next turn and see if we get any more of those messages.
There is one thing newsworthy.
Yeah? Okay.
Arco won the bid on the shipwreckers.
Yes. So this was talked about a lot in the game chat because a lot of players bid a lot of gold. In fact, many players, including Arco, sacrifice recruitment in order to bid more on the shipwreckers, and Arco got them.
They bid all 400 starting gold, I believe.
Yeah.
It's worth it, by the way, guys. Everyone should do that if you see the shipwreckers in LA.
They are so good. Okay, so we got messages, but since we know these nations build, this won't be about that. So we could. I'm thinking what we should do is maybe see if there are a couple other things maybe I want to talk about just about the whole game, and then maybe we could kind of cut this episode, and then in the next episode we could start looking at expansion. And we'll see during expansion, we'll see the builds that Tianchi and Arco and the others got.
Yeah,
I guess
you want to talk a little bit about. So we talked a little bit about some of the nations like Vadihheim, and we talked about like the blood magic on Ulm and so on. Do you want to take a time to talk about like national matchups, or do you want to wait until people start fighting?
Well, actually, maybe we can wait until they're fighting. But we kind of talked about the builds that the people who gave us information did, but we didn't really talk about the other nations just in general, right?
Okay.
Maybe we could just briefly, just as a first episode wrap up, like Arco. We didn't see their build yet.
To talk about this. Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
Well, now we know what their build is, right?
You can actually see it just from the. You could see it just from seeing the gray ones. They're running on a Wake Research build.
Yes.
So
exactly.
This is, if you look at the scales, they have absolutely no growth. They have Heat 3, Misfortune 2, Magic 1. So this is a very heavy Awake Research build. That also means that they incidentally have like a decent bless.
Yeah, they have like a
But
rainbow bless, I think, basically. Or not, well, not quite rainbow, but like stats and... I actually know what it is because obviously I've looked a bit ahead of the turns. But
okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I just want to say this is a great looter build.
Mm.
So I don't know if you've heard that term thrown around, but
No,
on the
but...
immersion server,
uh-huh.
looter is used to refer to uh, people that like attacking people, I should say. Like that you
Mm.
want to fight early and often, you want to take lots of provinces, and you make up for relatively reduced income scales by just being larger and killing people.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I mean, the income in your bad scales doesn't matter if you have other people's income, right?
Well, I mean more just that it's more focused on an aggressive play style,
Mm-hmm.
not scale specifically. Um, and an awake research build definitely ties into that, and it's also I would say very unusual from how Argocephaly tends to be played, but it should absolutely work
Yeah.
because early alteration magic is incredibly impactful. And if you have a stats blessed troop, like you have, some plus attack and defense on those heart companions, and they're 5 to a square, so you can cast Arcos, because you have both Orphic Mystics and regular Mystics, has an absurdly good suite of point buffs. They essentially have
Yes.
every defensive point buff in the game. At Alteration 3, at Alteration 3 you have Moss Body Protection and Luck. And then at Alteration 4 you add Ethereal, Iron Wars is 5. You add Ethereal and Quickness, I believe, to that.
Mm-hmm.
So at 5 to a square, those AoE 1 buffs are extremely high impact because you're getting, more units. And then if the units themselves become better, like normally they're humans, they have 11 strength, they poke for 14 damage.
Mm-hmm.
If you put like a little bit more attack on that, you put possibly even a little more strength, they can start actually like hurting. And then when they're ethereal, lucky, moss body protection, like you're not killing them.
So actually, I mean,
Um,
wait. There's no reason to hide this. We'll see it next episode. But he has Berserk in this bless.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So the only
which
thing I can think of for Berserk, actually, there's a couple things that's good for.
it.
So one thing that you can do with Berserk is when you cast Growing Fury, all units with Berserk on the field are instantly berserked.
Mm-hmm.
So you can assign the Heart Companions to Guard Commander, and then cast buff turns for all 5 of the first rounds, and then cast Growing Fury so that you can actually do 5 turns of buffing with
Mm-hmm.
your mages before they run forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And Berserk does address, like you said. So for the point buffs are unbelievably good with these units and this nation's mages. But the one thing point buffs can't fix is this garbage 11 attack 14 damage spear. But
well,
Berserk is giving you both strength and attack, which is like some of the stats that you're missing on this unit.
yeah, +2 of each.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm also looking ahead now because the War Shambler, the consort, blessed herself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually,
I don't remember the details, but it's Berserk and some other stats, I
yeah,
think,
it's
right?
Berserk, Strength +2,
Mm-hmm.
10 of Shock, Fire, and Cold resistance,
Mm-hmm.
and magic weapons.
Yeah, that
Seems
seems pretty
okay.
reasonable. I think I like. I think that what the play you mentioned with Berserk, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually saw that. This is Arco playing this nation, who's also a very good player, who would definitely think of that. But it might also have just been easier with points to get like 6 in nature or however much Berserk costs, rather than like Blood Surge and like all the other ways that people usually build up the
Mhm.
stats. Maybe you just can't
Yeah,
afford that with the Awake Researcher, right?
right. Yeah,
So
because he is already spending 3 fire on fire resistance and
e-
3 cold on cold resistance, so you
exactly,
can't buy your attack and defense there.
exactly, um, or your strength or like in Earth or whatever. So well, he did get the strength in Earth, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so total of +4
Mhm.
strength and +2 berserk. The only thing that you're missing with that is poison resistance, but since your mages aren't sacred anyways, you need to cast those poison resistance spells manually.
Yep.
So once you're doing that, you can just include your sacreds in that, and that's not a
Yep.
huge
Yep.
deal.
Yep. Okay, so that's for Arco, which is cool. Um,
That's also a really good build for Esoterus because he's also very scrappy. He will
mhm.
go attack someone year 0, no problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. And Tianchi. We don't know yet. Actually, we can. I forget what it is. What his actual build is. But it looks like he didn't expand with uh, ancestor vessels. I've had actually. Whenever
Well,
this video gets uploaded, there may or may not be the end of my last series uploaded, which I played LATNG. I kind of like this nation. I like the ancestor vessels. But you don't have to play too strongly with them. You could just go heavy cav all day. I had fun. In my last game, I went with Dormant, the little lich that doesn't move, with death weapons and like a few other random things, which was a
I
really
really
fun build.
like. Yeah, and then that also makes your spirits apply withering as well.
Yeah, it does. It's yeah, because Lady HNT gets the builds, and the ancestor vessels, because they have like a million weapons, are kind of fun. They're a good chassis to do a weapon bless if you want to
Yes.
do that.
I really like thunder weapons on them, actually.
Absolutely, yeah, that's another great thing to play around with for sure. But I know that that's not what he did here. I forget what he did exactly. It wasn't super special. We'll see what it is.
Um, he might be doing a Titan,
Could be,
because his scale, like a dormant Titan build, because he doesn't have an awake god. Um,
and they're not amazing
and
scales, right?
yeah, the
So,
scales are quite low, and his bless is quite modest. His bless is magic weapons, poison resistance plus 10, HP plus 2, so that's N4, and strength plus 4, which is most likely Earth 6, I want to say. So it's probably some sort of dormant
yeah,
with Earth
that's
Nature Astral,
Earth
which
nature.
points to a Titan.
Yeah, yeah, seems likely because not a lot of diversity in this, and that's not a bad build because you do want. Well, actually, you because the ancestor weapons bow is a magic weapon, you could kind of say, do I really need magic weapons on the blessed? But the problem is it's a ranged weapon, so the main thing you're one of the main things you want magic weapons for besides body ethereal is like fog warriors, and if you're fighting fog warriors, it's an air nation. They've probably got arrow fend up already, so having some other kind of magic attack that's going to get through all those things is definitely nice. This is for any nation, but in particular here for Tianchi, you need to rely on your sacreds for that. Atlantis. Oh, we actually. So they didn't send us a message, but it looks like they have taken an awake expander. So they took a
Yeah.
worm.
I actually ran a build very similar to this. This looks like extremely similar to the Atlantis build I used.
Let me just see what their worm build is. So water 2, earth 3.
Yeah,
Very
because you don't need
nice.
a bless on Atlantis at all.
No, exactly. So looks like they have order, productivity, cold, growth, some misfortune, and a worm. Good for them.
Yeah, the one thing that I would recommend differently for Atlantis is I think that it's a nation that really strongly wants Magic 3 because you don't actually have great booster access until you get like decent fire income and then can start making lanterns with Forgiving Fathers. While technically you do have Air 1 as a random on your Cat Mages, in practice you're not going to have that much air income, and you definitely don't want to spend their turns making lanterns. So while your expansion, and then of course your land mages are, I mean, they're not just lab rats, but they're going to be spending a fair amount of time researching while you want to use Frost Fathers for actual combat purposes.
Yeah.
So when you're spending your time researching with these 9 base RP mages, and you really want to get to certain like mid-game goals like Wailing Winds and Stygian Rain, and if you want to like start using those guys as like actually lethal casters, then things like uh, Frozen Heart are also really important. So you kind of do want to get some of that early research done, just because your magic actually. Well, I mean everyone likes magic. I mean it's
But
Dominions, everyone needs it.
yeah, but I totally see your point because one of the thing that makes LA Atlantis so scary is those kind of like mid game, like the Wailing Winds, the Stygian Rains, like those research level 6 or 7 spells that they like. There's like 3 of them that they happen to have the paths to cast natively, and they're just devastating spells. So it's really once you get to that threshold, it suddenly becomes incredibly scary. Whereas these like death and water up until research level 6 or 7, whether it's Wailing Winds or Siege of Rain, like before that, it's not like an astral nation that's getting a lot of work done with body ethereal or something like that, right? So you either
You
want to
can
like,
get that with your Forgiving Fathers. You can do Body Ethereal, Luck, and Quickness with those guys. They can all
yeah,
cast all three.
yeah, but like,
Uh,
but compared to like another nation, like I guess I'm seeing like,
compared to Arco, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, right? You're going for like you want to get to whatever Evo 7 or something. You want to get there fast.
Yeah, Atlantis is interesting in that they can straight up rush someone with no magic at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then their early mid game has a poison vulnerability, such that if you are running into someone who can cast like foul vapors in particular,
Mm-hmm.
but even just like the lower level poison stuff like Breath of the Serpent or I guess Poison Cloud isn't any earlier than Fell Vapors, but it might be easier to cast for some nation. Like those
Mm-hmm.
sorts of things are absolutely devastating if you can't find an indie mage to cast poison resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And this Wyrm is also missing um,
The,
the Nature 2,
yeah, they're
which
missing
means
nature. Yeah.
so you're reliant on getting Construction 4 and putting matrices on your indie end mages in order to counter poison stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is both more expensive and a little later in coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and the last nation that we didn't have anything from was Caleb, I believe.
Yeah, so it's the
Uh,
most aesthetic nation in the game. It's an extremely handsome bunch of birds. I'm a huge
mm-hmm.
Caleb fan. Um, just like the whole look of the winged people with their death magic, and yeah, and of course they're a magocracy, which means that they're basically like righteous people, all about
Okay.
education and that sort of thing.
All right.
Um, this particular Caleb is also very lucky. Not
Yeah.
because of their luck 3 scales, which they don't have, but because they ran him to hero on turn 2, it looks like, or turn 3.
Oh yeah, the third Heavenborn. Yeah, looks like it. Um, now we can. I don't know if we can cheat here. I don't want to do the look at the expansion in too much detail, but I wanted to see like in terms of the build. Looks like it's mostly scalesy, although no growth.
Their build is interesting. They have Precision 1, Shock Resistance 10, which is an Air 4 Bless,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have Undying 4, Undead Leadership plus 40, which is a Death 4 Bless. So I think that they took a Dormant
That's a
Titan.
dormant titan, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And specifically, that doesn't actually give them any new magic. It's possible that they have something else on that Titan that's incarnate,
Yeah.
or just like mixed paths for self buffing that they didn't put to level 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's what paths. If you were gonna do like a different dormant titan, what paths would you want to get the most on Caleb
oh,
that you
so
don't usually have?
I mean, I actually do like. There's a particular Dormant Titan build that I like for Caleb,
Mm-hmm.
which is Air 2, Water 1, Earth 2, Nature 3,
Yeah,
and
that
so that
covers a
wouldn't
lot
have
of
any bless at
bases.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's basically the complete self buff suite. It's
Mm-hmm.
very cheap because you have a Water, Nature, Earth Titan. So you basically just add Air 2 in order to get magic phase movement
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other battlefield spells. And then that also covers your bases for a lot of early magic and also a lot of early counters. So in addition to the Titan herself being able to buff to like basically every defensive buff and elemental resistance that you could want for an early war with just alteration.
Mm-hmm.
It also means that you have access to Moss Body and Foul Vapors, which are both not tools that Caleb has access to natively,
Mm-hmm.
but which are both really impressive for like a single army clearing super combatant.
Yeah, for sure. And Caleb, like just a bunch of weak or medium strength flying units attacking rear. Like they don't need to rely. You don't need to bless on Caleb, right? Like you could
No.
do Mimi things because you have sacred archers, and I'm all about sacred archers, right? Like that's a lot of fun, but you don't need that. You have like magic weapon flying guys, so it's
Yeah, and then the other thing that LA Calum has that the other eras don't is they have actually much deeper Earth access. So
mhm.
they can actually natively do Maws and they can make boots with their capital guys, so you don't need your god to do that.
Yeah.
Which means that you can actually do strength buffs on your dual wielding guys. You can do like Earthquake and Maws and other stuff that your flyers are immune to, but the enemy isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually do have like some really good mid-game magic options. The problem with Caleb, though, is that a lot of their early stuff is not straightforward strong. You're basically reliant on tricks instead.
Yeah, it's like attack rear all day, right? So hopefully, well, we'll see how it goes for them. This is a great point to wind up our first episode. We were able to go through all of the nations and all of their builds. We cheated and looked ahead for those that didn't send us the information. And then we can actually start to look at the scripting and people's expansion. We'll do that next turn. Is there anything else that we... Oh, I wanted to just briefly look at the thrones that we have in the game. So this is our standard setup where we have sort of one 2-point throne per nation, and then you need half +1 to win. So we have a lot of good thrones. Actually, we've got a first stage, so get MR buff if you get it. Growth +1 and 3 nature gems, another great throne. Throne of Death, unfortunate, but 5 death gems. Sometimes you want those. Misfortune, also unfortunate, but astral gems are nice. Throne of the Moon, giving us precision, but most importantly, giving us growth.
Yeah, Misfortune and Life are interesting in that if you already have Growth 3, you can still claim the Death Throne as long as you have one of those.
Yeah, for sure. Throne of Fire, giving us attack skill +3, and also a Fire 3 mage. So this is a fantastic throne. I mean, unless you happen to have no sacreds and already good fire magic, so I guess Fallenegra doesn't care too much about this, but like for most nations, this is a pretty good one.
Well, since Fallenegra is going to be using Shrouds for that regeneration Blood Surge Bless, I could actually see that working with their SCs to give them some really good repel.
Yeah. See, so it's so good, it's even good for Fallenegra. That's how good this throne is. Throne of Earth gives you access to the gnomes, which is fantastic for nations that don't have nature or earth access. And I mean, earth gems and Reinvig is always nice too. Water, which gives us defense +3, and the Hydromancers, which are water 3. Just a lot of the excellent, and we're not even done, guys, because we got the Crystal Throne, which gives us the Earth 2 Astrals. We got the Iron Throne, which gives us Earth Astral with the random fire, air, and other stuff. And we have the Golden Throne, which gives us the Astral Fire plus randoms. And then just for good measure, in case we didn't have enough mages, we have the Throne of Knowledge, which gives us the Lore Master, which kind of gives you a whole bunch of random paths, and the Sage if you just want a Researcher. So a lot of good thrones in this game.
Yeah, level 2 thrones tend to be good.
And so that can actually be quite determinant for a nation if they're missing a certain path getting one of those thrones. All right. I think that is all there is to say at this point. And we're
Do you want to talk about this first turn of expansion, or
I think
do that as a separate episode?
Given that we're just under an hour, this is a perfect time to wrap up this first episode, and we'll do the expansions in the next one. So,
right.
Thank you, Sy, for joining me in this adventure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for listening and watching, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care.